Most people today wouldn't last 2 minutes in a late 19th or early 18th century freak show. The things they displayed weren't just strange. They were jaw-dropping, nightmare-inducing, and, unbelievably, all real. You might think circus performers were all hype and hoax, but the freaks on this list actually existed. And once you see what made them famous, you'll never look at circus history the same way again. These are the 15 sideshow freaks you won't believe exist. Number 15. The German Midget. Henrietta Moritz, or as remembered by circus posters as the German Midget, stood just over 2 feet tall, but filled the room like a spotlight. This Berlin-born performer came to America in her 20s, joining the dime museum circuit and, according to rumor, even Barnum's shows after his museum closed. While many exhibits reduced performers to measurements, Henrietta's best-known portrait refuses that. The camera lingers on her face, not her size. A bright gaze, a sharp mind, and something defiantly human. She wasn't just billed for being tiny, she had charisma that made audiences stay longer than they expected. Those who met her described her quick wit and friendliness, the kind that cut through curiosity. Photos of her appear across old collections, but her later life fades quietly from the record, likely ending in the early 1900s. Still, those photos keep her alive, proof that even the smallest performers left an image too vivid to erase. Number 14. Czar of the Bizarre. Johnny Mia's story begins with paint, steel, and a taste for the strange. This Connecticut kid came up in a line of artists. His dad drew cartoons for the Bristol Press, and his grandfather shaped letters by hand. By his teens, Johnny was hanging around Hugo Zucchini, the human cannonball who also happened to paint banners. Under Zucchini's wing, he learned both crafts, the brush and the blade. Over the decades, he worked the midway with King Brothers, Hunt Brothers, and Ward Hall's shows, performing more than a dozen acts while designing banners bold enough to stop traffic. When the art world caught up, his work landed in the Smithsonian and Barnum Museum. He showed the freak show could be fine art. Later, he appeared in the HBO series Carnivale, and even wrote his own novel, Polydor. Whether painting giants or swallowing swords, Mia never chased respectability. He earned it with color and craft. Number 13. Larry Donovan's Last Jump. By the late 1800s, bridge jumping was more than a stunt. It was a way to make headlines. Larry Donovan didn't invent it, but he perfected the act. What started as a thrill turned into a career after he leapt from the Brooklyn Bridge in 1886, a 143-foot drop that earned him instant fame. He followed that with higher jumps across the country, each more dangerous than the last. But no fame lasts forever. He drifted into London, broke, drinking too much, and taking whatever stage gigs he could get. In August 1888, during a drunken argument, he bragged he could still do it. Jump from the Hungerford Bridge. The crowd laughed. He climbed over the edge anyway. There were no sponsors, press, or plan. Just a man chasing whatever glory might still be left. He hit the Thames and vanished. Witnesses scattered. His body was never found. Donovan's life didn't crash at once. It unraveled leap by leap until the water finally kept him. Number 12. Fakir magician Ali Kaba. Gerald Holmes wasn't satisfied with small tricks or card games. This Sydney performer reinvented himself as Fakir magician Ali Kaba, a name soaked in mystique and stage smoke. From the 1930s onward, he mixed sideshow daring with magic's sleight of hand, turning pain into performance. The act included sword swallowing, blockhead routines, fire eating, glass chewing, and skin piercings, all performed with eerie calm. He toured every dusty carnival across Australia before taking the act overseas, earning spots at American magic festivals in the 1970s and even bookings in Bahrain, where his Arabian persona somehow found favor with real audiences from the East. His stage presence felt both dangerous and spiritual, equal parts illusionist and endurance artist. Holmes eventually retired in the late 1980s, leaving behind a 50-year career built on scars, smoke, and discipline. To this day, his name still shines in the Sword Swallowers Hall of Fame, a performer who made pain look like poetry. Number 11. A Seminole in the sideshows. Willie Bowlegs came out of Florida's Everglades with more skill than most circuses could handle. A full-blooded Seminole, he carried the name of a legendary tribal leader, Billy Bowlegs, who fought the U.S. during the Seminole Wars. This Bowlegs wasn't a general. He was a showman. He juggled knives, swallowed swords, and wrestled alligators for crowds that had never seen anything like him. The Ringling Brothers gave him a stage, and medicine shows gave him a hustle. Between feats, he sold his own homemade remedies, promising health from the same hands that handled blades. He moved easily between tradition and show business, wearing his heritage with pride while surviving an industry that too often exploited it. In later years, he made Chicago his home, performing smaller acts until he died in 1964. Chief Willie stood as both symbol and survivor, a man who turned his culture and courage into a career. Number 10. The Last Lady Munchkin. Ruth Ducini never asked for fame, but she became part of one of the most iconic films ever made. She was born in 1918 and joined the cast of The Wizard of Oz as one of the Munchkins, part of the ensemble of singers midgets brought in to populate the Emerald City. Her role was small, almost background, but the film's legacy kept her in the public eye for decades. After the movie, she stepped away from the spotlight, working in defense plants during World War II. For years, she lived quietly, until the 80s brought a wave of nostalgia and invitations to Oz festivals and appearances. She returned briefly to the screen in Under the Rainbow, a film that didn't treat little people with much respect, but it reminded audiences that she was still here. When she passed away in 2014, only one Munchkin remained. Ruth wasn't a star, but she outlasted nearly everyone else, leaving behind a quiet, unforgettable legacy. All right, now let's move to Number 9. The Norwegian Hercules. Henrik Brustad was born in 1844 on the remote Norwegian island of Ytterøy. By the time he reached adulthood, he stood over 7.5 feet tall, earning him the nickname, the Norwegian Hercules. His condition was likely acromegaly, a growth disorder that made giants both admired and pitied in the circus age. Brustad first toured locally, but it didn't take long before he was invited to join Barnum and Bailey's American tour. His towering frame became a spectacle all on its own. Audiences didn't need tricks. His sheer size was the attraction. Not much is known about his personal life, but publicity spun rumors fast. Another Norwegian giant later claimed to be his grandson, though that was false. Like many sideshow giants, Henrik's health deteriorated quickly. He died in 1899 at just 45. He didn't leave behind memoirs or scandals, just a towering memory of a man whose size alone made crowds stop and stare in wonder. Number 8. The Yankee Yogi. Charles Griffin was a man determined to master everything the stage could offer. This Missouri-born and Iowa-raised guy started small, but quickly outgrew local fairs. He swallowed swords, breathed fire, twisted his body into knots, performed illusions, and even spoke through puppets, all while calling himself Professor Griffin, or the Yankee Yogi. At 16, he was already filling opera houses with astonished crowds. His talent carried him through famous circuses like Hilliard and DeMott's, Sells Brothers, and Pullman and Mack, finally reaching the Paris Pavilion in France. Later, he managed sideshows for Bob Hunting's circus before joining Ringling Brothers in 1899. His wife, Octavia, performed beside him as the Serpent Enchantress, handling snakes with a confidence that mesmerized audiences. Together, they created an unforgettable act that blurred danger and elegance. Griffin returned to Iowa later in life and passed away in 1914, remembered as a restless master of spectacle and pure showmanship. Number 7. The tallest married couple. In the early 1930s, Gottlieb Fischer of Austria met Elfriede Fischer of Germany during a stage show in London. He stood 7 feet 2, she was 6 feet 10. They were both tall by any measure, but together they became a living billboard. In 1933, they married and began promoting themselves as the world's tallest married couple. They weren't exaggerating. Unlike most circus giants, their size was natural. No acromegaly or glandular issues, just extreme height. They toured with Hagenbeck Wallace, Cole Brothers, and Ringling Brothers, adopting the stage names Mr. and Mrs. Long. Cowboy hats, big boots, and matching outfits made their height even more striking. But behind the curtain, they were just a married couple earning a living through curiosity. After retiring in 1948, they moved to Florida and opened a small motor lodge. They lived quietly for decades. Elfriede died in 1984, Gottlieb in 1988. There were no scandals or tragedies, just two very tall, unique people who turned love into a livelihood. Number 6. Kenny Baker. Kenny Baker never let height decide his range. This British performer was only 3 feet 8 and started hustling stages long before Hollywood ever found him. During the 1950s, he worked with traveling circuses, skating troupes, and cabaret acts, playing to packed houses across England. But then, television found him next. The Avengers, Circus of Horrors, and even a BBC Snow White special where he met his future partner, Jack Purvis. Together, they built the Mini-Tones, a quick-witted musical duo whose trumpet and mouth organ act became nightclub gold. Then came 1977, and the little droid that changed cinema forever. Hidden inside R2-D2's dome, Baker gave the machine a heartbeat, movement, timing, and attitude that no remote control could fake. He went on to Time Bandits, Labyrinth, Willow, and a lifetime of sci-fi conventions. His face was rarely seen, but his presence was everywhere. When Kenny passed in 2016, the galaxy didn't just lose a robot, it lost the good man who made it human. Number 5. Atlas and Vulcana. The partnership of Atlas and Vulcana was built on strength, scandal, and loyalty. Miriam Kate Williams, born in 1874 in Wales, showed remarkable power from childhood, stopping runaway horses and displaying fearless resolve before adulthood. At 16, she met William Hedley Roberts, a married gym owner nearly 10 years older. Drawn to her spirit, he left his family, and together they built an act that captivated audiences. By 1892, London music halls roared for Atlas and Vulcana. The truth was obvious. Vulcana was the real star. She lifted wagons, saved drowning children, knocked out thieves, and even pulled horses from a burning stable, suffering burns herself. She won real strength medals while Atlas relied heavily on publicity, sometimes using fake weights to match her feats. Touring Australia in 1903, they became international sensations. They raised 6 kids while performing into the 1930s. Vulcana lived until 1946, forever remembered as a bold, beautiful lady of impossible strength and resilience. Number 4. Daisy and Violet Hilton. Daisy and Violet Hilton entered life in 1908 in Brighton, England. 2 girls joined at the hip and born into a world that saw profit before humanity. Exploited from infancy by their guardian, Mary Hilton, the twins were paraded through Britain as living wonders. When Mary died, her relatives inherited not the girls, but their ownership, forcing them to perform under threat of violence. Audiences packed theaters, while the sisters earned nothing. Adulthood brought courage. They sued for their freedom and finally won both autonomy and $100,000 in damages. After that, they reclaimed their story, building real careers in vaudeville and burlesque with singing, dancing, and comedy that dazzled audiences across America. Fame couldn't undo the scars of control, but the sisters learned independence on their own terms. In 1969, they passed away only 4 days apart, still joined in body as always. Daisy and Violet Hilton didn't just survive their sideshow, they outlived it with pride. What do you think about these sisters? Let us know. Number 3. Al and Jeannie Tomaini. Few circus romances ever matched the story of Al and Jeannie Tomaini. Jeannie, born Bernice Evelyn Smith in 1916, entered the world with no legs and twisted arms, yet she taught herself to walk on her hands and perform graceful acrobatics. Her early years were filled with exploitation, shuffled between caretakers who saw profit before humanity. Everything changed in 1936 at the Great Lakes Exposition, where she met Aurelio Al Tomaini, a giant nearly 8 feet tall. Despite their staggering difference, she stood only 2.5 feet. They fell in love and married soon after. Marketed as the world's strangest couple, they toured together before retiring to Gibsonton, Florida, where they built the Giants Camp, a fishing lodge that became a haven for fellow performers. Their love endured beyond the spotlight. When Al died in 1962, Jeannie carried on, raising 2 adopted children and running the lodge until her death in 1999. Number 2. The Bearded Lady. Annie Jones came into the world in Virginia in 1865, growing facial hair from infancy due to a condition called hirsutism. By just a baby, she was displayed as the infant Esau, and under the sharp eye of P.T. Barnum, she rose to become one of the most celebrated bearded women in history. As she matured, Annie turned what others saw as an oddity into elegance, appearing in silk gowns and fine jewelry that amplified her confidence. She made beauty out of spectacle, charm out of scrutiny. By her teenage years, she was among the highest-paid circus performers of her time. But Annie was more than an attraction. She used her platform to demand dignity for performers labeled as freaks, speaking openly against ridicule and exploitation. Her poise challenged Victorian ideas of femininity, showing the world that self-acceptance wasn't weakness, it was rebellion. Through strength and grace, Annie Jones transformed difference into power. Number 1. Mademoiselle Gabrielle. Mademoiselle Gabrielle was among the rare sideshow stars to bridge the divide between curiosity and class. Born completely legless in Basel, Switzerland, she first appeared at 16 during the Paris Exposition of 1900. Her striking beauty and poise caught immediate attention, opening doors across Europe and later America. She performed at Coney Island's Dreamland Circus Sideshow and toured with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, billed dramatically as the half-woman. Gabrielle's elegant face, perfect posture, and lavish attire made her stand out from typical freak acts. She wore fine jewelry and corsets, turning grace into spectacle. In 1912, Hammerstein's Victoria Theater in New York, usually reserved for polished vaudeville, invited her to perform, an unheard-of honor. But behind the glamour came exploitation and frustration, leading to contract disputes that ended the run. Afterward, her trail fades into silence. Yet Mademoiselle Gabrielle remains one of the few performers who transformed deformity into dignity and beauty on her own terms. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you very soon.